Hey everyone, how's everybody doing? It's good to see you guys. Hey Tech Death. Hey Annie, Cindy, Digital. Hey Mare. Hey John. So good to have you guys here tonight. This is going to be a really good show. I have Perry waiting behind stage. I wanted to introduce him to everyone. I'm just going to wait one more minute for people to come in because I did start a couple minutes early. But we should have a really good show. We're going to talk about a couple of different things. We will talk about Delphi. So everybody, please remain respectful. I know you'll probably have questions, but I just want to make sure that we get to talk to Perry about a number of different topics. But yeah, we will be discussing Delphi. So I know people want to hear or want to know that. So, hey, Tamara. Hey, Angel Bear. Hey, Purdue. Good to see you. Thank you guys for joining. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Perry Freeman, he has a YouTube channel called Cop Faxx, and he is a retired detective. He has a really long resume, but I'm just going to go through some of it, and I'll let him talk about some of it as well. But he was in the Colorado Springs Police Department, and there he was in the homicide unit. He also worked in patrol. He was an instructor at the police academy. He also worked undercover. While he was working undercover, he infiltrated an outlaw biker club, and he's written a book about it. And if you look at the thing scrolling across the bottom of my screen, it tells you where you can get Perry's book. It's out on Amazon. It's called House Secrets. So please be sure to check that out. Also check out his YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed and liked it, it is amazing. His content is very good. So after he left Colorado Springs, he moved to a small town in Nebraska, and there he served as the police chief for 17 years. Right now, what he's doing after his retirement is enjoying his family and writing and producing. And he has a new short film that he's produced on human trafficking. And I just can't tell you how good it is. It's amazing. Tech Death Hippie did the music for it, which is just, Tech and I've talked about it. He just thought it was an amazing honor, which I can totally understand because Perry to me is just amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on with us. So everybody say hello to Perry.
Hello.
Hi, Perry. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I'm going to share something on my screen here. So give me one moment to do that. I want them to see your book. So we're going to get that up here for them. There we are. So they can kind of see it. Perry, how have you been doing?
Pretty good.
Seems like you've been really busy.
Not really. I need to be, but I don't know. I guess I stay busy. I'm working on 2 possible novels now, based on things I experienced, just like House Secrets. And I want to produce some more films, but logistics and getting help and all that is a little difficult. But that's my, that's kind of my passion, is to do some more films.
Well, this one that you did, you should be extremely proud of. I've talked to a number of people who, as I told you backstage, highly suggest that be viewing for our school children, especially our high school age. Probably, I would say even middle school. I just think that it's something that needs to be talked about more. It's not just kids being trafficked. I mean, obviously adults are as well, but the whole idea of it, and you can talk more about that and I'm sure give us more insight into it. I'm sure we would all enjoy that.
Sure, can do that.
I'm going to ask this question. What was the one thing, or was there one thing that you can point to that made you decide to get into law enforcement?
My dad was a cop in Wichita. I grew up, in a law enforcement family. My dad was a cop. My uncle was a cop, both in Wichita. I think that's probably the biggest motivation. When I was young, I wanted to be a cop, follow in their footsteps. As I got into my late teens, early adulthood, I'd had some run-ins with law enforcement. Some of my friends had, and I kind of went the other direction for quite a while. And one day, my dad basically just challenged me, actually nose to nose, because I'd made a really nasty comment about a cop that actually accidentally killed a 16 or 17-year-old kid. And my dad grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me nose to nose and said, "If you think you can do any blankety blank better, get your ass out there and do it." And so I thought about it for a day or two, and I went, "Well, I know I can do a better job than that." So I applied and I got on. And that was the beginning of it.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, I guess. Let me just point this out. The way law enforcement is today is a sad state. When I went on in 1981 in Colorado Springs, there were over 1,000 applicants. And I was lucky to be one that was chosen to go to the academy. My brother just retired from Colorado Springs, so my brother's also been a cop, and he's still an investigator for the district attorney there after his retirement. But he tells me now, when I went on the department, I think it was probably 400, 450 cops in Colorado Springs, and we had over 1,000 applicants. Today, I think they're close to 700 cops and probably 500 civilians, and they're lucky to get 200 or 300 applicants each year, because of what the press and some of the public has done to law enforcement. So they're in a decline right now, and there's a lot of the old veterans with the experience are leaving because of lack of respect and unable to do the job for legal reasons. The criminal justice system is broke. So all these new cops that are coming in have no experience, and we don't have those veterans to pass on all the tricks of the trade, or whatever you want to call it. So, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's ways to document this, it takes a good 4 to 5 years before a new cop really understands the job and knows how to be productive. And so we're going through a bad period right now.
Do you feel there needs to be more training for police officers, Perry?
I think obviously maybe training needs to be adjusted to some extent. I was assigned full-time for over 3 years to the training academy, and I taught investigations, all the report writing, all that kind of stuff, search and seizure stuff. I was responsible for actually writing some of the policies for the department. Some of it had to do with use of force and different things, but I think the press depicts the worst of bad situations. I think obviously there's going to be some changes in training because of everything that's developed since, I suppose, the George Floyd case was what brought everything to the forefront. So yeah, I think things need to change to some extent. But my dad always said years ago when I was growing up, he used to ask me this question: how long do you think we would survive as a society without law enforcement? And I would say something like, I don't know, a week or a month or whatever. And he'd go, no, it's a matter of a few hours. As soon as the word got out that there's no law enforcement, there'd be riots everywhere. And we kind of
Exactly.
we saw that a while back, I think, in some of the big cities, because they were basically told to stand down. So I'll get off that soapbox. But yeah, we need to do some attitude changes with the training and that kind of thing. But we don't want it to get to the point where cops are afraid to use force. And I've rambled on about that before too. Cops or other people can get hurt if they don't act appropriately. And sometimes, rarely, a cop makes a mistake and somebody ends up dead or seriously injured from a mistake. But most of the time, I think cops do a great job and they just don't get the credit that they deserve.
And I agree with you. I have relatives who are police officers. I have a couple who are detectives, and I will tell you that they, when I've talked to them about this subject, their comments to me were, it is not easy to police today in this day and age, in the society that we have created, and that it is extremely dangerous. The public doesn't have a clue about how dangerous it truly is in general. And it's so easy to point fingers at police. And I'm not here to have that political discussion with you tonight. I don't want to do that. But I will say it's just like any other profession. You're going to have bad apples or whatever. You're going to have incidents that may be people doing something that they shouldn't have done in the throes of a situation that most human beings are never put into. And I think that we're quick to throw judgment without all the facts. And I think we do that just as a society in general. And I just think we need to step back and really evaluate, because I agree with you 100% that the justice system is broken. And I think that
it is totally broken.
I could not say it better myself. And it needs a complete overhaul. And we can't be without police. We have to have our police forces. And with that being said, every city has to pay for those police forces. And, that's where people don't understand. A police force is only as strong as the city that they're policing. You have to vote to keep those police forces getting new officers, paying for that, because it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah. And, there's not a lot of rewards being a cop. There's some, but, when you see a little kid waving to you when you drive by, if you're in uniform, that's a nice stroke. I mean, that's a good feeling. Or people that just, come up to you, much like the military, thank you for your service, that kind of thing. That can be overdone, but it's nice to hear that. So I would encourage people that do appreciate law enforcement to let them know that you do.
Well, you guys see the worst of the worst. I mean, I just can't imagine the psychological effect that it has on you.
Yeah, you end up just like me. Yeah, it does. It takes its toll. There's no doubt.
There's no way that it could not. So let's talk about your book.
Well, first of all, is that still on the screen, the book?
It is.
I just want to point out, if you're familiar with Gonzo, he took that picture. He's promoted my book. He and I hit it off pretty good. He actually took that picture in a restaurant, a little joint that I used to own in Colorado. He went there to see, because he told me he was going to that area. And I said, well, stop by this place. I used to own it. And so that's actually in a little place that I used to own. And he took that picture. If you're familiar with him, you realize how artistic he is.
I think it's amazing. A great picture. I love
the hat.
It is.
Yeah.
The hat is a great touch.
Well, he always wears a hat.
I love the hat.
Guys
I
always
like
has
the
a hat on.
tattoos. The tattoos are like, that just adds to the whole theme of the biker.
Well, he read it. And in fact, he did a little, probably 10-minute spiel on film for me when I interviewed him one time about the book. And he said he was hooked right away. And he gave away several copies to friends and all that. So he's been a big help. But yeah, I can't wait to see him again. He's a great guy. And he works on a lot of these cases. He's been to Delphi. He's been to Tennessee for the Summer Wells case and a lot of time in Colorado on the Suzanne Morphew case and other cases too. But he's boots on the ground, the real deal, for sure. But the book, I was encouraged to write by Lou Hunter, who was a professor at UCLA in the screenwriting school, retired, but he happens to live in the same little town that I do. And he was very supportive when I came here and encouraged me to write. But he was a screenwriter. In fact, he has like 22 of his students who have won Academy Awards for their screenplays. So he knows what he's doing. He's worked for all the networks, Disney, ABC, NBC. He's worked for everybody. Anyway, he pushed me to write, and I first wrote a screenplay. And the first part of this book I took from that screenplay. We tried to promote the screenplay, and I couldn't find the money to produce it. So I turned it into a novel and finished it. So if you're interested in what an undercover detective goes through, especially a narcotics detective, you find out what that's about. The main character is kind of based on some experiences I had. And if the outlaw biker scene intrigues you at all, I infiltrated a club, and in the book, I embellish everything, of course, but that's kind of the story. And there's a murder that's the center of the story, and it takes all these people to eventually solve the murder. It's not a true story, but a lot of the situations are true, things that I actually experienced. So that's the book.
I can't imagine infiltrating a biker gang. And how
doesn't happen very often.
I was just going to say, I can't imagine. My mind quickly runs to Sons of Anarchy, which, by the way, I don't know if you're familiar, but I loved the show. I watched it.
Let me just say, and you may get canceled here, I can't sit through one episode of that show. It looks like actors dressed up to me.
Yeah.
The biker world is much more gritty than that. We'll use the word.
It's probably much more dangerous in my opinion.
Oh yeah. I'm glad they're successful and all that, and they make people aware of that world. But it's much nastier than it's portrayed on that show. It was just a chain of events. I just happened to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And it's a long story, but I just happened to meet some people. I was working, I had an informant that had got in trouble. He was wealthy. Everybody knew him in town. He's one of those guys that had a business, and he's on TV every day promoting his business. Everybody knew him. And he got caught with some prostitutes and some cocaine, and it was a shootout. And so he comes to us with a high-powered attorney and wanted to try to work with us to keep this out of the press and to work his charges off if he could. So I worked with him, and he and I went out every night for a while, and in his Mercedes. He wouldn't go in my car. He tossed me the keys and says, "No, we're not riding in that. We'll go in my Mercedes." And so we started going to these clubs, and the bouncers were often bikers. So I was seen with him as kind of a sidekick for him. So when I later met a professional informant that's all he did was introduce cops to bikers, and he would get transferred from one department to another, and he was always on the run because there were contracts on his life and all that. He messed with some bad boys, but he made a living working for law enforcement, and he picked me as the person he wanted to work with. And so I started making appearances with him around the clubs, and like I said, the bouncers already kind of knew me, and so that was kind of my in. The next thing I know, I'm sitting at the same tables with the local club, and
wow,
it was an experience.
So tell me, how did you get Tech Death's music
Huh.
for the
Is he
movie? I want to
watching?
know that story. He's my moderator. He's one of my
Right.
moderators, and he
Is he
did the
on tonight?
music for my intro. So
Is he watching tonight?
he is. He's in the chat.
Good, good. Tech Death, how you doing, buddy? I saw his video where he used Emotions. That's the song. And I thought he wrote it for, he had Abby and Libby in this video that he did, a lot of still shots, and his music played, Emotions played all through it. And I thought he wrote it just for that video for Abby and Libby. And I thought, I've got to use that music. I love it. And so I found him and asked him if I could use it. And he was gracious enough to let me use it. And it works great for the film. But he didn't write it for the Libby and Abby thing. It just happened to fit. And if he ever wants to share why he, what was behind writing that song, that's on him. But yeah, we've hit it off pretty good. I think he and Gonzo are pretty good friends too. And I think Gonzo has used some of his music. And I think you use some too, don't you?
Yes.
Yep.
So, I learned about all of you guys through Graz. I mean, Real Chill Graz is how I found everybody. And
I think I was Graz's first guest. I'm not sure, but I think I was.
And that, that to me is just amazing, because I can't say enough about him. He is just an amazing content creator, I think, as well. And a really great guy. And that's where I found Tech Death there. And he is just an amazing musician.
Yes.
I mean, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, I want to meet him someday and hear him live. But
so there you go. I mean, really, I can't say enough about him either, and he knows that. So,
but yeah, I just on Graz, I went on his show. He was just getting started, much like you. Probably had a following just about like you do now. And I thought he was sincere, and I thought he was, really believed in what he was doing. So I agreed to go on his show. Same as yours. I mean, I can tell you're really into this, and you do great research, and you're going to have a great channel eventually. It's going to grow.
Thank you.
So I only go on shows with people that I believe in. I've been invited to some others that I just found an excuse not to do. And there were a couple of times there were legitimate excuses. I just wasn't up for it at the time. I was under the weather for a while. But I only go on shows where I believe in the host. And I certainly believe in your show.
I certainly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
The whole idea that you brought, when I saw your content that you did on, we have to be careful about how we talk about cases and what we say.
Yeah.
I have been screaming that mantra for months. I have a Reddit sub I started 7.5 months ago, Delphi's Daughters. And I started then. When I watched your stuff and how you talk about how important it is that we are careful, because we can taint cases, we can taint juries. And people just don't get that. And I really would like it if you would talk about that tonight.
Well, let's just take Delphi, for instance, because that's was my motivation to do that particular video. I myself probably have 4 theories, persons of interest here and there. So I have 4 that I'm pretty convinced that they could be the perpetrator or perpetrators. And when they do arrest, and I think there's going to be more than one arrest, when they do arrest people and they get to court, like I said in that video, the defense attorney is going to do anything in the world that they can to taint just one juror. All they need is one juror to not convict. And my fear, and I've seen it, where they bring in the defense can bring in anything they want. They can fabricate anything. The prosecutor has to play strictly by the facts. The defense doesn't have to do that. They can fabricate anything. So if we take one of these persons of interest and the people who've done all this research and have their foundation for, the opportunity and the motive and all the things that would point to this person, and a defense could easily use that information to taint one or more jurors to not, convict the guilty party that's in the courtroom. So I just wanted to point that out for people. Like, I don't think law enforcement is appreciating that. I think they appreciate that there's this true crime world that's tuned into Delphi, keeping it alive. But I think we have to be real careful about getting too specific about certain people, because I think it could backfire. It could create problems. Let's just take the Suzanne Morphew case out in Colorado.
Okay.
Perry Morphew was arrested a while back. Just a couple of days ago, maybe 3 days ago, they dropped the charges because they were going to trial here in a week or so. Well, they've never found Suzanne Morphew's body. So I think the prosecutors, I don't think, I know this, the prosecutors didn't feel that they were ready to go to court without the body. I mean, they're convicting him of murder or trying to. So they dropped the charges for now, and I think they're going to make a concerted effort to find that body. And that will help with their case. And they can refile. Just because they dropped the charges doesn't mean they can't refile them later.
They can still refile against the same defendant, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Same charges or different charges, whatever. So they just weren't ready yet. And I saw the defense attorneys at the microphone right after they dropped the charges, and they were downplaying the prosecutor and basically just trying to taint the public already, just bad-mouthing the prosecutor, excuse me. So just keep in mind, the defense can do anything, and they will, and I've seen it. I mean, they've come after me. I spent many, many hours on the stand, days on the stand, and they go for your throat, seriously go for you. They try to taint you. They try to impeach you, and you've got to learn to stand your ground. And this kind of goes back to the law enforcement whole thing. You don't learn even how to present yourself in court until you've been exposed to it. I can remember mistakes I made when I was in patrol when I first went on. I blew cases because I answered questions wrong, or I didn't preserve a piece of evidence one time on a stolen tire and wheel. It was a fairly minor case. But I took a picture of the tire and the wheel that the guy was stealing. I caught him in the act, but I didn't preserve it and present it in court. And so we couldn't determine a value for the item that was stolen. I lost that case. But boy, did I learn something from that. But it takes those kind of experiences or learning it from a veteran officer. So that a little aside. But back to the persons of interest, I just think we need to be careful. I think they're pretty close myself. If we only knew what law enforcement actually knows, I think they've had a pretty good idea who they were after early on. But there's something missing. There's an alibi or something that has presented.
That's where I'm at. I believe they're trying to break an alibi or alibis.
Yeah.
I firmly and absolutely believe that.
And there's, like I said, I've got 3 really strong directions that I could go. 2, I could probably present a case and convince a lot of people that this is the person or the group. And a couple of others that are just kind of on the fringe. But law enforcement knows way more than we do.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I try to tell my viewers that all the time, that just because we don't see something happening doesn't mean it's not. And just because that we don't think this or whatever doesn't mean that they don't know. And there's so many people out there that believe they don't know anything. I mean, I'm still floored by the people that said, and I'm going to ask you this on how you feel about this, but in December, on December 6th, when the Indiana State Police came out and said, were looking for information on the Anthony_Shots account. That was news to all of us. None of us knew that they were looking at that angle. None of us had a clue about any of that. That blew everything kind of out of the water, in my opinion.
Yep.
And they attached that release to the Abby and Libby tip line. And in my view, they would never have done that if it wasn't related to the case in some fashion. How do you, as a police officer, see that?
Well, I'm sure there was a lot of thought into releasing that site. And of course, the people associated, the people that we know that are associated with that, are people they were well aware of. So I think they have a strategy, and they're playing it out. And I think it's, that may be one of that may or may not be who we're after. But I think it's a strong piece of evidence. That whole area there is very interesting. Let's just leave it at that.
It's like a hotbed of crazy.
Well, I mean, what's going on in Indiana? And anyway, I mean, look at everything.
I asked that question myself.
You go back to the 4 girls in Flora.
Yes.
Just a few months before. That one still bugs me because it doesn't get much attention. And then this one, and is there a connection between, and I know there's a real meth problem in the area, and there is all over rural America and the cities too, but there seems to be a huge meth issue in Carroll County and Lafayette and that whole area. So I think that plays into it. I think meth is in the middle of this whole deal.
You think meth is going to be part of it?
Yeah.
But between that and this whole CSAM ring that's going on too,
yeah.
I mean, I'm like, all I can see is Doug Carter, excuse me, and Tobe Lesenby told us that we were going to be shocked.
Right. And they told us that early on.
Early. Excuse me. And I don't think what people understand what that actually means.
It's going to be interesting. And we're all, we check every day. We check every day to see if an arrest has been made. And I think it's getting close. I think it'll be this year for sure.
That's really good to hear.
And I've got all the confidence in the world with Doug Carter.
Excuse me.
I try to read body language. You learn to do that as a cop. And I just have a lot of confidence in him. I know a lot of people don't like his being evasive about a lot of his answers, but I understand why he's being evasive.
Exactly. There's a question: was there a meth issue in Nebraska
Absolutely.
when you were police chief?
Yeah, still here too. One of the biggest states for meth is Missouri, rural area of Missouri and Arkansas. There's a book, I can't remember the title of it now, but it kind of...
Do you think there's a reason why they pick rural areas?
I read a book, I can't remember the name of it right now, but Lou Hunter actually gave me the book, but it was kind of the history of meth and how it took over the country for a while and still a huge problem. But a lot of it had to do with some of the packing plants where people were working 12, 14-hour days for overtime, and they were taking amphetamines, legal ones, prescription amphetamines, and to be able to work those hours. And then meth came into the scene, and it was a bigger rush and could keep them going longer. And that was kind of what brought it to these rural areas where these huge packing plants, and they're all through Missouri, Arkansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. So that was kind of the center of it. And it identified and named several families that were involved in all that. And there were these super labs coming out of California and Mexico that were, spreading it across the country. But yeah, it's a big, big problem. And it's still a problem where I'm at. Yeah.
That's very interesting because I had never thought about the amount of hours that they work at the plants. I always thought about the how awful things they see at those plants.
Yeah.
The violence.
Yeah, too.
Because I think that plays into the psyche of a person who works there. Yep. Just, I mean, over and over, you become numb to the violence.
I had a guy come into my office here in Nebraska a few years ago, and he worked on the kill floor at one of our packing plants. And he just reeked of death and blood when he came in the office. I mean, and I talked to his wife later, and just out of the blue, I don't remember what she was in for. It had nothing to do with where he worked. But his wife was in, I had to interview her, and she brought up the fact that she couldn't stand her husband when he came home with this death all over him. And it was affecting their relationship and all those kind of things. But that kind of plays into what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
They see that death all day long.
There's a question, Perry, do you think ISP have handled the public release of information in a way you would have? I personally have found much of it confusing and contradictory, yet understand the reasons why.
Yeah, I don't know that we do know the reasons why, but I agree it is confusing. And I think what everybody feels is, why can't they release a little more of the audio from that phone? Because there's more there. We know there is. And the reasoning behind that, I have no idea. There's something they don't want the public to hear right now. I don't think what we do have, the guys down the hill, I don't think that's said together. I think guys is said at some point and down the hill at another point. And I don't know. I really don't know. I can't say that I disagree with the way they've done things. I don't understand why they're doing it the way they are. But there's a cover up for sure, whether it's somebody important or the alibi thing that we already talked about. There's a cover up somewhere, and they're trying to get over that hurdle. So why they can't tell us more, I just don't know. But I have confidence in them. These are, usually the State Patrol are, their investigators are going to be top-notch people. And there's people working on this every day. Whether we believe it or not, there's people that work this every day. So it's coming. You muted yourself, or I did, or something. I can't hear you.
I did. I was coughing, so okay. I muted myself.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm okay, CD. It happens. I have asthma, so it does happen occasionally. So I'm really glad to hear you say that you think that they will find it, or there'll be an arrest this year. That makes me feel good to hear that from you. I feel that way as well. I think it's coming. It's coming.
And let me just add that I think some of these YouTube sleuths, at least one of them is on the right track. And I'm sure law enforcement has somebody that's monitoring this stuff. And if they're not, I mean, I've told them that they need to be monitoring it, for one thing. Whether that carries any weight or not, I don't know. But I've called the tip line a couple of times where I thought some of the creators were onto something. I don't know. I've talked to people who have talked to the investigators, and they're confident that they're on to things. So, yep, we just have to bide our time and wait for that wonderful day.
I think we all want this solved so badly, for justice for Abby and Libby and for the families. And there's just been, over the 5 years, there has just been so much put out there about all these different POIs. I've never seen a case like this before in my life, ever.
No,
I don't know about you.
No, never. Yeah. And I think it's bigger than, I think it's going to shock everybody, not only who it is, but I think there's way more people involved in the cover-up and maybe the actual murder itself. I think it's going to shock people.
I think it will be too. And
this wasn't a random situation.
No, I don't think it, I never from day one thought it was somebody just out there randomly going to kill somebody. I never ever thought that. But I have also felt that it possibly could be somebody pretty prominent is involved here.
That's one of the theories that I am interested in.
And I've really kind of stuck to that feeling that I think somebody prominent is involved in this, and whether it's because of the money or whatever, I don't know, but that's just a feeling.
Yeah, and there's several different prominent people that it could be.
Yes.
Not just
exactly.
There's one really obvious one, and then there's another one that's kind of been forgotten about. But yeah, that could be the direction. But then, and that could be tied into the meth world too.
No, exactly. You stop and you talk, you think about the meth and the drugs and all of that, and how that can all play into why or how this happened. But I definitely think that there's money and big money involved here. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, it could be.
It's a huge lucrative business, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And they're making a lot of money. And
Yep.
whatever happened here, whatever, it's not unusual for people to be killed over drugs or related to it.
I've worked homicides. I worked one over like $25, a murder over $25. It was a crack. Somebody bought a rock of crack on the street from a peddler on the street, and it was fake. It was actually ivory soap that had been crushed or smashed together. The seller ended up dead a few hours later when the guy came back and plugged him for $25. So yeah, when they're in that world, and especially meth, people.
There's a question somebody asked if you think it's tied to any of the land deals.
I don't know. I understand that theory. It's possible. I'd hate to think that somebody would go to this kind of a situation just for purchasing property and for money. I've heard that theory a lot, and it's possible.
Yeah. Kanga Blue says it would be shattering to learn a trusted person or persons in a position of power were involved and had helped to cover up the murder of 2 innocent young girls.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. That was for sure. Do you think that the upcoming election for sheriff is going to have next month, is that going to have anything to do with this?
Don't know. I haven't really thought about that. Don't know.
I just wondered, there's a lot of talk out there that a new sheriff is going to bring new eyes and it's going to help the case. I just wondered how you felt about that.
I don't know. I'd love to, putting new eyes on a case is important. I'd love to see the case.
Have you told them that? No, I'm kidding.
No, other than through YouTube. But, we go back to the John Benet Ramsey case in Colorado back in 96. They were, that's another case I know a lot about, but I don't want to get into it. But our unit was asked if we could send a couple of homicide detectives up and put new eyes on the case. And we were a 6-man homicide unit, so that they wanted 2 of us to come up and look at the case. I don't know that I would have been one of those, but I would have liked to then. But we were working 2 double murders at the same time. We had 2 elderly women that had been murdered, and we had 2 young kids that were shotgun murdered from some gang members on the street. And both of those were unsolved at the time. So we had 4 murders, both of them at the same time. They were front page news, especially the kids. And that's when Boulder asked us to go up just to start over. Our chief was going to send us, but the homicide sergeant, which I believe was probably Joe Kenda, said we can't do it. We got 4 unsolved homicides right now, fresh ones, not to mention a few from the past. But we had like a 92, 93% solvability on our homicides. We did a pretty good job.
And like I said, that alone right there is the reason your eyes should be on the case, because Carroll County has one of the worst in Indiana solving rates of homicides or cases, and Indiana's 48th out of the 50 states. So really? Indiana does not have a good no.
I actually hadn't heard that, but I know they have their problems with child trafficking and everything else. Indiana, I wonder what's going on. But eventually, back to John Benet, Lou Schmidt, who worked in our homicide unit for a long time, and then actually went to the sheriff's office when he retired from CSPD. He ended up going and looking at the case. And of course, he had the intruder theory on the John Benet Ramsey case, and nobody up there wanted to buy into that. He went to his deathbed, with that concept. And he still has family members, and I think a couple of Colorado Springs detectives that are retired that are still going through his theory and looking at persons of interest that he had. But I talked to Lou a number of times about John Benet Ramsey because I had a whole different theory and had some inside information, I thought. But he just insisted it was this intruder. But anyway, he put fresh eyes on it, and it took them in a whole different direction. And they didn't want to hear it. Whether he was right or wrong, I don't know if we'll ever find out. I think if somebody on their deathbed wants to clear their conscience, that might be the only way that one ever gets solved.
It's her case is so heartbreakingly sad, happening at Christmas, and such a beautiful child who should never have been taken away from this earth in the manner in which she was. And what boggles my mind, I guess, on that whole case is that I get what you're saying about him, because he firmly and absolutely did believe that, and he had a lot of good reasons to, but I still go back to it's got to be somebody in the house, and that's just, I don't know if we'll ever know.
Well, I don't want to go into it. I've been into it in the past, and it's caused me some grief.
Yeah.
I've been contacted by people that basically said, need to mind your own business kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's way bigger than the general public is aware of. And I'll leave that one at that.
I'm sure. I am definitely sure. Somebody wanted to know in chat why law enforcement, in your opinion, has not cleared all the family members.
Has not in the John Benet case?
No, in Delphi.
I don't know. I don't think they've cleared anybody. Is there?
They haven't cleared. They haven't cleared anybody. They've covered them. They said.
Yeah.
They call them covered.
I don't know. That's again that falls into their game plan somehow. And if there are no family members involved, that may take the heat off of the real perpetrator, thinking, oh, they're still looking at the family, so I don't have to worry. I think they're watching people very closely for them to make the mistake, the big mistake, and it's coming. I think it's going to happen.
What is your thoughts of all of the stuff that's happened since December, with the interrogation being leaked of the Klein guy, Kagan? Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you feel that that's part of their strategy, or was that an accident?
Maybe. Yeah, we'll just have to see if that group is involved when it all comes down. If so, yeah, I would say that was something they discussed and decided, okay, let's release this, let's let this leak, and see what happens, what develops from this leak. And boy, there's a lot of stuff from the YouTube sleuths that has developed for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just taken over.
A ton.
Yeah. So I think it was intentional. I think they're not just doing something spur of the moment. They think things through, and they have, you sit on, when you're in a homicide unit, an unsolved homicide, you have people that are working suspect angles, people that are working the family, the victims, witnesses, people that handle the crime scene, which is mostly what I did actually. But you cross over and you do all of it. But after everybody goes out and does all their interviews or collects evidence or analyzes evidence or whatever, then we come back and we have a meeting. And everybody that's involved, usually 6 or 7 of us, would share what we've learned. And we would, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Well, that plays into what I learned over here. And then we would go off again in our direction, maybe meet the next day and share again what we learned. And that's kind of how it works. And I think that's going on, maybe not every day in this Delphi case, but certainly once a week, or once every couple of weeks, there's a group that's getting together and sharing everything that they're learning. And I just hope that at least one of those people is assigned to watching all the YouTube stuff and the Reddit stuff, because you just never know. There's some pretty sharp true crime stuff.
Why do you think Doug Carter said so many new personnel will need to be added after the arrests are made? Why would that be? He said between 60 and 70 officers would need to be added to go back over everything, I thought, is what he said. But
that's the first I heard that. I don't know.
Said that in his interview in February, right around the 5th anniversary, one of his interviews with the TV stations.
He said that he would need all those people to reevaluate the case. Is that what you're saying?
He said to go over every piece of everything.
I wouldn't think it would take that many people, but I can understand having, again, fresh eyes to come in and make sure that, that their opinion and what they've gained through interviews, physical evidence, whatever, is accurate, and it all comes together, and it's enough to convict. So yeah, I understand that. It seems like a lot of people, but it may be that big. It may be way bigger than we realize. I mean, let's think about, remember the prostitute, I can't think of her name now, in the
I do.
Lafayette area, talking about the Lafayette Club or whatever it was called.
Maria, what's her name? Maria knows. Maria, what's her name? The escort from Lafayette. Maria, you're in here, right? I think you are.
I mean, the stories she told were unbelievable. And that's huge.
Unbelievable.
And there's some pretty important people.
There's a lot of important people around that. The Boys Club, Lafayette Boys Club.
Boys Club, that's it. Yeah.
That's scary in itself. Just that group.
And there's the Dirty White Boys, that whole prison mentality. There's that group all over the country. But those are some nasty people.
Very nasty people.
Whoever did this, and I think there's more than one. I mean, how did the girls get from the bridge to where they were found? One person didn't do that.
Her name was Jalen.
That sounds right. Yeah. Listening to hers. I mean, I met a lot of people like her. That the trafficking film I did, all 5 of those little stories come from people who shared just like she was sharing. Now I changed them in the film, but the the meat of each of those scenarios were told to me personally, that how they were taken into the sex trade. So watching her is like, this isn't somebody looking for attention. This gal's the real deal. She's telling the truth. So
Oh yeah, I thought she was very compelling with how she talked about what happened.
Yep.
With all of that. I didn't feel at any time watching any of her stuff that wasn't on the up and up. And it's extremely scary.
Yeah, and that's a whole
lifestyle.
area. That's one of the directions that someone could go. Who knows? I think there's an underworld there that I think law enforcement is aware of it, and it may be big. It may be really big, and maybe that's why it's going to take so many people to analyze it, because it's going to be enormous. A homicide case, a simple, what we would call a slam dunk homicide case, would be maybe 3 or 4 of the 3-inch 3-ring binders. You might have 3 or 4 of those. So your case is actually, 1.5 foot, 2 foot deep.
Right.
A complicated one might be 10 or 12 of those folders or more. This case, I would expect they probably got, I hate to think how much paperwork is involved.
Right.
Photographs, so much stuff that we don't know. Can you imagine how many warrants have been issued that we're not aware of? How many search warrants?
I
How many
can't.
phone records have been collected?
That's again,
stuff.
I don't think the public understands how investigations work. Do you want to explain what they have to do to get a warrant?
Well, to get a warrant, you have to present probable cause to a judge that a crime has occurred, and that whatever you're looking for in a search warrant or an arrest warrant, either that this person committed this crime. First, you have to convince the judge that there was a crime that was committed, a murder, let's say, and then if it's an arrest warrant for that murder, you've got to convince the judge in writing as to why that person had the opportunity, the motive, the means to commit that crime, so that that judge can go, okay, you've got the right person. And then you got your search warrant if you're looking for evidence, or you've got your arrest warrant if you're going to make an arrest. It's not almost probable cause. Probable cause means that the average person would be convinced that the crime was committed and that this person committed it. That just everyday citizen, the jury, would be convinced. And that's what the judge, that's how they have to look at those applications for a warrant. Whether it's a search warrant for the evidence that evidence that you're looking for is going to play into your investigation, and you've got to present probable cause. You've got to proof beyond a reasonable doubt, basically, that evidence is related to this case, so you can go search their house, their phone records, whatever it might be.
One of the questions that I have, and I'm going to tie this one here in with it that's on the screen, but one of the questions I have about Kagan is every single court date he's had since he was arrested on August 19th, 2020, has been pushed back by his attorney. Every single one. And he was supposed to go to court just 2 months ago. And that got pushed. The trial that had been set up has been pushed to September. So my question to you is kind of like what she's saying here, but why would they keep pushing when they have all this evidence already on him, on all these 30 counts of CSAM material? Why would they keep pushing that case like that? Why would his defense keep pushing it when they actually came out in December and said they were done negotiating? There was not going to be any more negotiations. What is the reason they would do that in your mind?
Well, with the defense doing it, he's got he or her has their reasoning. I don't know. Now, the speedy trial is out the window. Once the defense asks for these continuations, the speedy trial is out the window. So that doesn't play into it at all. If the prosecutor was delaying things, the speedy trial is still active, and you have to get them to trial by a certain date, depending on what level of crime it is. But anyway, I have no idea unless they think they're going to learn things that can help him if they do go to trial. And maybe he's or she is waiting for more negotiations. Maybe they're hoping that he actually does know more than he's given up, and maybe they're trying to figure out what he wants to give up, what he knows.
Sure. This question was, hi, Kristen, awesome show. Got a question. When Kagan goes to pretrial and then to trial for the 30 counts, do you think they will tie Delphi with them? I would say no. What do you say?
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I think there's people that speculate that he knows this person or that person. And we suspect that he was communicating with Libby. But we don't know the details of that. We know very little about that communication. In fact, the grandparents are both shocked that she was involved in any kind of social activity like that. And that's sad to see them. And just an aside, I mean, that's the way kids are. I mean, I've raised a number of kids, and as they became adults and we were able to open up and talk about things from the past, they shared things that they had done, when they were 15, 14, 16, whatever. And I'm like, what? You did what?
You did what?
Yeah. And I was the same way. I mean, like an example, my dad was a cop. When he came home, he had several guns, but he had the gun, his service revolver, always went in the same place in a shelf in his closet. And he thought, and it was always loaded. And he, don't ever touch that, kind of thing. And he taught, I mean, I used guns all my life. He took me out shooting all the time, but I wasn't to ever touch that gun in the house. But every one of my friends, I took into that bedroom and showed them that gun and handled it, and they handled it. So I shared that with my dad many years, later when I was an adult, and he was like, "What? You got to be kidding!" So it happens. So we don't know what those girls were up to, and I don't want to taint their image in any way. But I'm sure their parents and grandparents really didn't have an idea what they were doing, and none of us do. And this is nationwide. It's not just those two girls.
In this day and age with technology, where it's at, it's really difficult, I think, to know exactly what your kids are doing 24/7. But I feel bad. I especially the interview with Becky, where she's basically blaming herself. It's just so hard to watch. There's a question here from one of my moderators, AJ. She wants to know, Perry, in your vast experience, did you use body language, linguistic, and profiling experts very often? And if so, what was the most helpful tools they brought?
Body language I used on every contact with anybody, whether it was from patrol to an interrogation or an interview with a suspect or a witness. I still do it. I read everybody's body language. I can pretty much tell what people are talking about across the street just by the body language and the way they're dealing with each other, especially when it's a couple, like a man and a woman together. So yeah, body language all the time, especially in an interview. So many little clues about the way people handle themselves that I won't go into. Linguistics, no, not so much. Profilers, I only used a real FBI profiler one time, and it was on a double murder. And I'm right. That's one of the stories that I'm going to write eventually. It's unsolved to this day. I know who did it. I believe he's deceased now, but anyway, I used a profiler from the FBI. But once he found out that I had a suspect, he couldn't go into too much detail and give me a concept of a profile of that person. He kind of went out on a limb and just over the phone told me roughly what age person I was looking for, and what level of employment they would have, and that they would have an attachment to their mother, and probably no male father image in the family. That's about all he would tell me, and he was right on. That's exactly. Only thing was the guy was older, but mentally and emotionally he was more the age that the profiler said. So they can't actually profile somebody if there's a suspect. So who's the famous profiler that everybody uses on YouTube? I'm drawing a blank right now. He's very good. He's talked about the Delphi case many times, and he's very good. But let's see, once the arrests are made, let's see how close he was. And I'm not tainting him in any way. I think he's very good. He's got a great resume.
Are you talking about John Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
The profiler. Yeah. And I've seen him on many cases, and I think he's
amazing.
Probably as good as anybody.
Yeah, he's amazing.
But he'll be the first to tell you, well, I was wrong on that one.
Right, exactly. Are you surprised on Delphi that they keep so much close to the vest?
For this long, yes. For 5 years, I would say I am surprised. I can't remember us ever releasing much information, or any information for that matter, on the unsolved homicides that we were working. I don't remember us ever releasing anything. The press releases would usually be done by the public information officer, who really would know very little about the case. He would just go to the microphone and the cameras would be on, and he would tell them whatever the lieutenant or sergeant told him to release. Would just be that we're working on it, basically. I don't remember us ever asking for help from the public on a case that I was working. So I don't know. Don't know. They've got their own. Are you surprised that
the FBI is involved in this case?
Oh, no.
Are you also surprised that they called in the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And that happened in December of 2018, the beginning of 2019, prior to the 2019 press conference.
Wasn't aware of that. And no, I don't know why that's happening, but I certainly understand why the FBI is involved, and we were probably had them involved in a case if it was that big, it was unsolved. I don't remember us using the FBI on any of our cases, other than I had someone that was in Saudi Arabia who was a suspect. In fact, I had an arrest warrant for him on a murder, and it had happened many, many years earlier, but we finally were able to get an arrest warrant for him. But we didn't have an extradition agreement with Saudi Arabia. So I was able to go through his business that he worked with and found like one of the top supervisors who let me know when he was coming back to the United States, like for a vacation. And I had to use the FBI. I had to give my warrant to the FBI, and they took him off when he landed in DC or New York. I can't remember which. And then, well, it was DC because we went and got him. So we used them for things like that. I think nowadays they use more of the U.S. Marshals for that because the FBI is so involved with terrorism. I take that back.
That was the other question that I was going to ask was, we were told in February by Doug Carter that the U.S. Marshal Service is being utilized. So a lot of people had that question. Why? They only thought the U.S. Marshals went and got people and brought them back, but they do a lot more than that, don't they?
No, they do the real work. Wow. Well, I was a U.S. Marshal for a while.
Okay.
When we worked undercover, of course, and many times we would need to go out of state or all over the state or whatever. And so most of the unit, a federal judge came into our office one day and swore us all in as U.S. Marshals, or most of us, because we had wiretaps going. We ended up in Mexico. We ended up down in El Paso and Las Cruces, New Mexico, and into Kansas, and, Wyoming. So, and I went to Washington and New York and good places too to pick people up. But that way we had authority to act. If we had to arrest somebody, handle somebody, whatever, we had that authority, the federal authority. So without giving up too much, yeah, U.S. Marshals do the real out on the street work.
Out on the street.
The FBI wears suits and tie and like to flap their badge out, and they're not that there's good ones. I've worked with some great ones.
The U.S. Marshals go undercover, don't they?
Yeah.
There you go. They go undercover. They infiltrate.
Yep.
There's a question. Do you think the fact that a special prosecutor was brought into Carroll County in January could have anything to do with Delphi?
I think they definitely need a special prosecutor. Yes. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. How, Brad asks, I'd be curious about that topic in regard to Delphi. Are there undercover people working this case, do you think? How many and what kind of things do you think they would do? Be careful, because I know you don't want to give away what they're doing, but
I worked when I was in narcotics undercover. I worked on murder cases in Colorado Springs. So yes, I'm sure, on a case this big, yeah, absolutely. There's people working undercover. I mean, we would work at the request of the homicide unit. Can you watch this house? We would only do that when we were requested to do so by the homicide unit. They would say, we need to watch this person. Can you follow their activities tonight? Because the regular homicide detectives, that's not their expertise. We were pretty good at, sneaking around, following people, mixing with people, sitting next to them at the bar or whatever. So we did that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that's been done in this case. I'm positive.
So there's a great question from Lynn. Why would the FBI take away all of the description of the suspect in the Delphi case off the wanted posters? There is no longer any description of him. And that all happened in the last 2.5 to 3 months.
Well, like I kind of hinted to earlier, I think there's more than one person involved. Let's just take BG.
Bridge guy.
Yeah. Is that a male or a female? I'm not the first person to point that out. But
you are not.
There's, of all the names that come up in this circle of persons of interest, there's a female that looks more like Bridge guy than anybody else that's been pointed out to me.
Boy, I know which one you're thinking of, I think.
But anyway, I thought it for a long time, and then several other people presented that, and I.
Well, when you look at Bridge guy with his head down, it's hard to say who that is.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought for 5 years, the way everybody is so adamant about these doggone sketches and the arguments that entail, I'm like, they're sketches. These aren't pictures, and you can't see who that is on the bridge.
No, and then there's the whole possibility, a lot of people have pointed out, maybe he's wearing a mask, or whoever it is wearing a mask. Age, we don't know. Height and weight, we really don't know. So I don't, not that picture isn't very important, but we don't learn a whole lot from it. We can't tell all the equipment that he may have or she may have, whoever it is. There's a lot of speculation, but we don't know really what's under that coat, what's in his pants, whatever.
Exactly.
We just don't know.
Right. No, for sure. They've told us a lot of things, but I've often wondered if they've told us certain things that aren't exactly, not necessarily true, but to put us in a different mindset because they don't want the suspect to know what they know.
Yeah, for sure.
And to me, that goes back to who's speaking on the bridge. But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they put some intentional misinformation out. You know, the whole shack situation.
Yes.
Is there anything to that or not?
Have you seen the movie?
No.
It's compelling.
Have you seen where is it Becky Patty? Is that the grandmother's name? Is that the grandmother's name is Becky Patty, right?
Yeah, Becky. Mm-hmm.
Did you see where she exposes that book that Libby was reading?
Yes, I have the book. I bought it.
I read it
and
last
I'm reading
week.
it.
I read it last week.
I'm midway through. Incredible.
Interesting, isn't it?
Very, very interesting.
And she intentionally wanted that book exposed.
Yes.
So I think it takes us back. You see people in chats. Why doesn't law enforcement convince witnesses, people who know what happened, from coming forward by explaining the witness protection situation? And I've kind of encouraged them to do more of that. But they might be able to protect you, your wife, your immediate kids, but you can't protect the rest of your family. And that is what people fear. You don't fear your own, you don't worry about your own life. It's what somebody might do to your kids.
To your kids or your
kids disappear,
or your
wife
disappears. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what I really think. There are people who know, but this is such a nasty person or persons that
they're scared to death.
They're scared to death.
They're scared to death.
I think that's the big obstacle.
Because I go back to the very beginning of this case, in just the first few weeks, when we heard from Robert Ives, he said point blank, when we walked upon that crime scene that day, we really thought that this would be solved within just a few days. There was something there that made them think that.
Yeah, I agree. And we don't know, when we hear what might have been at the scene and what the girls might have looked like, but we don't know. And I don't know that I would really want to ever see it. But again, I would love to see the case. But yeah, I think they were pretty confident right away. And then
yes.
There's this huge obstacle. And I think it comes down to one or more people coming forward and sharing, okay, I gave you bad information. Here's what I really actually know.
Yeah.
And they're scared to death to do so because it could end up just like the girls or a loved one could.
What else do you want to talk about with the case in Colorado? Let's talk about her. Is there any more you want to talk about that might happen with that? Or do you think that they have any idea where she's at? Or
I think they're learning more and more about where she might be. I wish Gonzo was here. He could give us more information. He spent months out there. I can't wait to see him again to learn more from him. I don't know, but I suspect that they feel pretty strongly that they're going to find her. And I think they had to drop the charges and, put off this trial that was coming up in a week or two,
sure.
or whatever it was, because they couldn't convict without that body. So you can convict without a body. We had one here in Nebraska at a college, Peru, like a junior college. A guy was assuming that he killed this woman, probably molested her, killed her, and dumped her in the river. And she's never been discovered. But they were able to actually take his car right to the river, I think, and they had him with her earlier and that kind of thing. But without a body, it's very difficult. They did convict this guy a few years ago without a body. But in the Suzanne Morphew case, I think they're going to need to find the body and be able to show
it bothers me because it reminds me of Kristen Smart. Are you familiar with the Kristen Smart case?
Sure.
And again, they haven't found Kristen either. and they're getting ready to go to trial. Obviously, they just changed venue on that. I'm covering her case as well. Again, I remember when she went missing, but it is hard to convict without a body, isn't it?
Well, let's take Natalie Holloway.
Okay. Yeah.
They just couldn't get whatever his name was. I can't think of his name. They didn't have enough to
Vandersloot, wasn't it?
Vandersloot, yeah. They didn't have enough to charge him and make it stick. It took him. He couldn't resist another situation.
He
And
committed
who knows how
another
many
murder.
more. But that one, they actually had him on film at the motel room and
Right.
going in with her in the whole 9 yards. And he's now put away. But yeah, they couldn't do it without that body. And,
Pam asked a question back about Delphi. Do you think the huge obstacle that you were speaking about could be falsified evidence?
Yeah, absolutely. Could be. Probably is. Something that somebody said early on, and that was the obstacle, and it probably still is. And that person's scared to death to change.
To change their story.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's so scary.
Well, and there's other murders that could be tied into this.
Exactly.
I won't go into that, but shortly after that, there were a couple of people murdered.
Well, yeah, because I'm still wondering. All I will say is it's pretty. Well, let's say this. I'm going to ask you this question. You may get uncomfortable, not answer it. How often do police officers take their own life while they're on duty?
Well, on duty, I know of one that I worked with that did, but it was a very unusual situation. I think it was a niece had come forward and said that he'd been molesting her when she was younger. And within a few days, he offed himself in his cruiser. On duty, I can't.
Because we have a Delphi police officer who committed suicide on duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it had to be something as big as the one I just explained that pushed him over the edge.
Yeah.
I would think.
I think Tech Death, are you talking to Gonzo? Gonzo just got here. He's here. He said, service in this area is wild. I'm in and out of reception. He said he's keeping track. He's watching us. But he's in the chat. So you can say hello to him.
Yeah, you stood me up last week, bud.
Hey, Gonzo. It's good to see you.
We were supposed to meet up last week, but he didn't make it.
So somebody asked the question. They weren't here in the beginning. They want to know what your thoughts are, if you have any, on whether or not they have or don't have DNA in this case. And what do you think the likelihood of them not having DNA would be?
I don't know. We don't know what they have. I think maybe there could be issues with the DNA, that it's not going to be able to make a positive identification with it. Don't know. We don't know. They've told us that they do have DNA, but do they have good DNA? Don't know. I wish we knew. And
yeah, no, I know. I don't know if you saw the interview that they did on the HLN special.
No,
in February. They did an additional edition to that Down the Hill podcast, and Paul Holes was on it, and you're familiar with him, I hope. He is the profile. Paul Holes, Holes. He is the profiler who worked on the Golden State case. And Paul said, when they asked about DNA, he felt that it's one of the situations where there's so much DNA from the girls that the perpetrator may have left DNA, but it's such a smaller amount that it's all mixed together and they can't use it.
Right. That's kind of what I was pointing at. Yeah. If they do have it, it just may be contaminated, or there's not enough, identifiers that they could actually make a positive ID, or they would have already done that. I think they have enough persons of interest that they could have gotten warrants and got the DNA from the people they needed, or they could have got it surreptitiously. That's where undercover guys come in.
That's true.
Use your imagination on that one. But yeah, you pick up a cigarette butt or whatever.
Oh no, I mean, I this is all fascinating to me. So I'm taking it all in, and you're giving me a lot of things to think about. And I'm sure a lot of people here that are watching, we have quite a good group in here watching us. So, hold on one second. I'm looking to see. Do you think that Libby's phone is going to play a huge role in this, or not? Do you think it's not going to be that big of a deal?
Oh, I think it's going to be a huge part of the case. I mean, if I'm wrong, let me know. But my understanding is the phone was maybe in a pocket after she did the photograph of Bridge Guy, and that audio should be on there. So there should be some pretty good information on that phone, I would think.
And they're not going to tell us if they have that. I mean,
no.
They're just not going to tell us that. And I know people they're hanging on to every word law enforcement says, and law enforcement has said, yes, the crime is not on there, but I don't think they're going to tell us if it was.
If you watch those pressers that they've done, those are rehearsed. I mean, that's in writing. They've rehearsed it. There's going to be very few words that come out of their mouth that wasn't on that outline that they have. They're very, very careful what they're saying. And they have been for 5 years. Even these recent interviews that Doug Carter has done, he's very, he just won't answer the questions, and
yeah, they do.
I'm not going to talk about the evidence, and that's a pat answer that he's got, and he's sticking to it. And he should.
Oh yeah, I mean, they won't talk about it. It's like they absolutely won't talk about it. So, yeah, I mean, hang on a second. Looking through to make sure we get everybody's questions for you. Is there any other insight on Delphi that you want to talk about, or that you think? I mean, I know everybody was jumping on all of the stuff that the murder sheet put out, and you've already addressed it and said that you feel that was more than likely done. I mean, it's not something that was an accident.
Yeah, I think they had they wanted to see what would evolve from that being released, and they're probably watching very carefully, a lot of people, to see exactly.
And I think that's true. I think that's what they've been doing since December, is they're looking to see what these people that they're watching are doing with all this information coming out.
Yeah.
But I am really glad to hear that you think, again, for those of you guys just coming in, Perry talked in the very beginning about his feeling that the case will be solved this year. He feels pretty strongly about that. For those of you, I've seen people asking that in the chat. That's why I wanted to let you know. And I think that gives us hope. A lot of people have lost hope. I haven't. And somebody just asked the question, do you think there'll be an arrest and somebody charged soon? More than likely, more than one person.
I think so.
Yeah. Perry believes that there's going to be more than one arrest. Gonzo said to tell you he's going to call you soon. He loves the content. Cheers, everybody. He has to run. So he's telling you he will be calling you.
See you, buddy.
So.
Wait a minute. Is he still there?
He might still be in here.
Yeah, I don't have it anyway. He hid a coin for me out in the woods.
Oh, he did?
And I thought I had it in my pocket of some of my other jeans. But anyway. I carry it.
That's funny.
I try to carry it with me.
What do you think about the fact that the latest law enforcement information officer, presser, whatever you want to call it, their release of information to us was on the Yellow and Yubo apps, and the fact that they actually came out and said they're going to France. They're sending people over there. Did that surprise you, or?
No, I mean, that's what you do. If there's a possible lead, you're going to go there and deal with it.
You have to
especially
go,
on a case this big.
you have to go check it out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I went to London and Liverpool on a case. But yeah, you go wherever you have to go.
You have to go wherever the evidence leads you.
Yeah. If you have the right boss, and in this case, Carter's going to send somebody. Yeah.
So somebody wants to know if you will say what you think the motive is, but I doubt it.
No, but there has to be a motive. That's the issue. This isn't a random, crazy person that just took whoever came across that bridge. There's a motive. I'm not sure what it is. I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm not going to throw them out. Other people have probably thrown out the same things I'm thinking, but yeah, there has to be a motive.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a motive.
It's a big motive.
When you talked and talked about cover up and all of that, and I felt that from the beginning as well, but I didn't know how or where. I can't put my finger on that because I don't think we know enough, but I definitely think it screams it to some degree. Like I said, this case is like no other, and I know you feel that way. You said it. It's just like it's just so bizarre to me. There's just so many layers to it and so much going on, and I'm like, is that on purpose to keep us all confused or what?
Don't know, but this is not really answering your question related to that, but in patrol, when I was new, maybe the first year that I was out on the street, I went to my first murder scene. There was a dead body in a motel room. He'd been stabbed, I believe, 17 times. I was the first officer on the scene. And tried to remember, okay, what did they teach me in the academy? What am I supposed to do? I've got a dead body. Somebody said there's a guy dead in here. So I went into the room, and anyway, I discovered the body. And I came out and just protected the room until more people got there. One of the first detectives on the scene, by the way, was Lou Schmidt. And he didn't even know me yet. And he comes walking up with his recorder, walks up to me, and he says, and I'm now approaching, because he was giving the license tag of every car in the parking lot, who was standing on the balconies and what room they were in front of, those kind of things. And he says, and now I'm approaching the uniform officer at the door, and he clicks it off and he goes, and it's Officer P. Freeman and blah, blah, blah. That was my introduction to Lou Schmidt. Well, once I cleared that scene, that's all I ever learned about that case until many years later when I'm in the homicide unit. That's a cold case. It was never solved. And so I wanted to read it. And after I read the case, it was 2 or 3 of those 3-ring binders that I talked about. It was amazing how much they learned about what went on the night before in this room and people that he knew. He was kind of a transient person anyway. It was a real low-end motel. But just to see, what I knew from the first cop to see the body to what the investigators had done, weeks and weeks of work, and all these years had gone by, and it still was unsolved. And I've discussed it with a number of people that are familiar with it, and everybody had their theory as to what happened and who did it. But it's just, kind of related to what you're saying. What those first officers saw and their confidence that this was going to be solved quickly, obviously something went wrong. And I think it comes down to, deception by somebody that covered.
Somebody wanted it to go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Somebody did not want it solved.
Yeah. And they've been able to keep this going for 5 years. Over 5 years. So
and they feel pretty doggone confident that
I think they're feeling less confident, but yeah, up till recently, I think they
I
felt
hope
pretty
they're
confident.
scared to death. I hope
I'm sure they are.
they know that law enforcement's coming for them.
They'll get
Somebody
'em.
wanted me to ask if you're familiar with the Bardstone cases. It's a
No,
very cold case. Bardstown cases.
no.
No, he says. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. It's been so great talking to you. We've been here for about an hour and a half. Is there anything else that you want to talk about tonight, or?
No, I just, I appreciate you inviting me to your show. Like I said, I wouldn't have come on your show if I didn't think you were doing good work. I like your show. I watch it more than you realize. You do great research, and I know your heart's in the right place. That's why I agreed to come on. And
well, I really appreciate having you. And like I said, your insights are just wonderful. I think you do some of the best work out there, honestly. From a law enforcement perspective, we all need that because, us as sleuths out there trying to figure this stuff out, we don't know how the inner workings work, but you do.
Well, there's a downside to that because when I do something on YouTube, which I haven't done in a while, I get a lot of flack from people like, well, I can't believe you're saying that. You're supposed to be a professional and blah, blah, blah. And how would you ever think that this is what, you take a lot of hits. I mentioned, yeah, I'm sure. But I'm supposed to be the pro, see, or one of the pros. I mentioned on a case that kind of something that I thought I had some insight on. And I mentioned a psychic who claimed to have received this information, and it was almost identical to what I was learning. And so I mentioned that person in my video. I can't believe what I caught, the comments about how could a law enforcement officer believe in a psychic? Well, the U.S. military uses psychics all the time. They train them. Have you ever heard of remote viewing? That's what it's all about. And the military's been using it for forever. So I'm not saying I want to use a psychic for everything, but I think you don't want to overlook
I think that
anything
there
either.
are people out there that have psychic abilities.
Absolutely.
I believe that they definitely are out there and they can be utilized. Is that something where people infiltrate that aren't real? Of course.
Sure.
Happens in everything.
Yeah, a lot of that.
But
and you couldn't use a psychic's information in a search warrant or whatever. I mean, if it took you down a certain path and that led to you recovering some evidence or whatever, you could explain how you got down that path through the psychic's information. But you couldn't use the psychic's information as the foundation for your search warrant. And I guess people were thinking that's what I was saying, but I certainly wasn't.
Sure. I want to make sure that everybody knows to go to Perry's channel on YouTube, Cop Faxx, and make sure you watch his new short film. He's going to be doing more films. He's also doing more writing, and we all look forward to that because I'm telling you that film needs to be out there and people need to be sharing it everywhere. Please share it and share it and share it because it needs to be watched.
YouTube hasn't put any ads on that. Do you think there's anything wrong with that it shouldn't have be monetized?
Do I think that it shouldn't be monetized?
Yeah, it's not.
No, I think it should be.
It's not. I haven't made a penny on that on YouTube.
I'm just saying, getting to that topic as a content creator and a new one coming up, I can't monetize yet because I'm not at 1,000 subscribers, but I at first didn't think I wanted to monetize my channel just because I knew I would so many people take flack for doing it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, when I look at how much hours I put into research, to putting together my shows, my videos take forever to do. I'm like, there's a lot of work that goes into doing this. And so there's nothing wrong with being monetized and getting paid for what you do. That's how
Well,
I.
it doesn't pay very well.
No, it doesn't pay very well, but I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
if
I mean,
there's nothing.
for some people it does, but
Yeah, for some
I'll
there
never
are
be there.
people out there that are making a lot, but
And you'll hit 1,000 people here real soon.
so yeah, I'm like I said, I didn't get into it for that reason, um it's been a crazy ride these last few months.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about YouTube and the community. I'm sure you're aware of it as well, and you know, we've got a good core community here, and I think that I keep telling everybody, if we put our heads together for the good, the greater good, boy, we could do a lot of really wonderful things here. Covering cases, getting cold cases out there. These families need us to talk about their cases.
Yeah, keeping them to the forefront is, yeah, that's important. And again, the four girls in Flora.
I'm going to cover Flora. It is one of the things on Reddit, we talk about it so much. It's one of the things that's forgotten. Those four girls. I mean, it's horrible, and all of the corruption around that whole case.
Same county,
same district attorney. I mean, same sheriff, same all of it. And you know, it needs to be looked at really, really closely. So I agree with you on that. But I really appreciate you coming on, and I know everybody here is saying, you know, that they really, really appreciate listening to everything that you had to say tonight. They've learned a lot from you. So that was the point of having you on, because I knew that you would give us a lot of good insight and information.
Well, I hope I didn't disappoint you, but
you did not disappoint at all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you, I hope, soon, and maybe we can do this again.
Sure. Yeah, after we make an arrest or two, maybe we can get back.
That's awesome. After I will make that a point. Once we get an arrest, we'll have you on. Then we can
open up and really talk about it. Yeah.
Then we can really talk about it. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. But well, Perry, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight, and we'll chat soon.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Hey guys. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. I'm sorry that I had my little hiccup there with the coughing. That happens to me sometimes with my asthma, but I think he was amazing. We learned so much about him, and how he feels about Delphi. Yeah, people are going to be shocked. I mean, I'm sorry, you guys can think what you want about Delphi, but when we're hearing it from a detective who has years and years of experience on this stuff, and he knows his stuff. And also, he also made a point of saying there is one YouTuber out there that's on the right track. So just remember, we don't know who that one is, but there is a YouTuber out there that's on the right track. So I firmly and absolutely believe that, yes, Judy, I firmly and absolutely believe that Bridge Guy is watching, or Bridge Guys, whoever that may turn out to be, is watching our YouTube channels. They're watching. The law enforcement's watching, and they're watching. Isn't it though? He's one of the best guests you could ever ask for. I'm so glad I asked to have him on and that he agreed. He's just amazing, and can't say enough about him. Make sure you guys go out and check out his book. It's well worth the read. House Secrets. It's on Amazon. And support him, and make sure you check out his channel. I appreciate all of you coming tonight. As always, You guys are amazing. I couldn't do this without you, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a great rest of your night and a rest of your weekend. And I'm going to tell you good night, and don't give up hope on this case. We are going to have this case solved, and soon. Good night, everybody.